What's up, guys? It's Randa, and today we are talking about The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. So I had a chance to see this with a few friends the other day, and I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. First and foremost, there will be spoilers for the movie in this video, like throughout the whole thing. So if you haven't had a chance to see it yet and you don't want to be spoiled, click away from this video now, go watch the movie, and then come back once you've had a chance to see it. Now, one thing I wanted to get out of the way right up front, this is the first movie in the main Conjuring series that was not directed by James Wan. So for that reason, the movie was going to have a different feel and atmosphere no matter what, like regardless of the story they chose to tell. I personally really enjoy James Wan's work, but I also had an open mind going into this movie because I really enjoy the franchise and I wanted to see what their new take would be on a new story. I will also admit that while I love the main entries in the Conjuring series, I have seen a few, but not all, of the spin-off tertiary movies, because overall some of them were just not very good and I just didn't get around to it. Couldn't be bothered, didn't have the time. Sorry about it. Live and let live. So the movie actually starts right in the middle of an exorcism with Ed and Lorraine Warren trying to help an 8-year-old boy named David Glatzel, who has allegedly been possessed by a demon. In the course of the exorcism, when the priest has been incapacitated and Ed has been struck by a sudden heart attack in the middle of it, the boyfriend of David's sister, Arnie Johnson, actually invites the demon to take him instead and to spare the little boy. And Ed, in the midst of his heart attack, is the only person who witnesses this. And since he's incapacitated and immediately rushed to the hospital, everyone just believes the exorcism was successful and all is well. It's only when Ed wakes up and warns Lorraine that anybody realizes anything is wrong, and by then it's too late. Arnie has been struggling with not feeling well, and when he begins suffering from really vivid and horrifying hallucinations, he actually stabs a man to death while thinking the man is some kind of monster who first attacked his girlfriend Debbie and then tried to attack Arnie himself. In trying to save Arnie, the Warrens approach Arnie's lawyer and propose a defense based on not guilty by reason of demonic possession, which had never been tried successfully at the time. And the problem is that ever since he committed the murder, Arnie no longer seems to be possessed. In trying to find solid evidence of Arnie's possession to bolster his case, the Warrens first find a witch's totem under the Glatzel home, which means that the demonic possession was no accident. It was actually a curse, something that was deliberately invoked. In trying to learn more about who is behind the curse, the Warrens seek out both a former Catholic priest who has experience in dealing with satanic cults, and they also find themselves embroiled in another murder case which might have ties to demonic possession as well. In the end, we discover that Ed Warren himself was the final target of the curse, and that the secret daughter of the former Catholic priest is actually the occultist who is responsible for invoking the curse. Trust me, it seems as crazy as it sounds in the moment. In destroying the altar, the Warrens save Arnie and Ed himself from the curse, and the occultist herself is killed by the demon that she summoned because she owed it a soul. And with that, the day is saved and the Warrens have a new artifact for their museum of supremely haunted items. Don't go there. If you enjoy the more directly horror-oriented focus of the first two Conjuring movies, this might not be the movie for you. The first two movies have a very strong single-minded focus on the demonic cases they're dealing with in those respective movies. So the only real investigation comes from trying to learn the nature of the spirits in the house and the history of the house so they can best help the families involved. Because this movie involves a demonic possession that is deliberately invoked by another person, it was obviously going to have to take a different approach. But overall, this movie feels much more like a supernatural murder mystery or crime procedural. A lot of the runtime of the movie is actually devoted to studying the police cases and trying to track down leads so that the scares are interspersed between a lot of investigation. I personally thought it was an interesting approach since we're seeing a deliberate and active curse being invoked rather than a family moving into a house that already has spirits attached to it, but it does make the film a lot less overtly scary than the other two in the main series. I will also admit some people might take issue with how Satan has been portrayed in this movie, especially since the movie itself takes place in the early 80s and in the broader context of the satanic panic that gripped America during the 80s and 90s. Now, this is very much a horror movie representation of Satanism, with its totems and curses and whatnot that are deliberately used to invoke demons and to curse other people. I would hope that most people these days understand that Satanism, Wicca, witchcraft, paganism, all of those practices and ideologies and even more, that is not what they're about, not by any means. Do not take this movie as an accurate representation of what those practices are. But if that kind of portrayal is an issue for you and you really can't get past that, I completely understand. If that's the case, this probably isn't the movie for you. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga have always really been what grounds the Conjuring movies. Their genuine dynamic as a married couple has, in my opinion, always been one of the strongest, most believable elements of the series, and their bond has always been a stabilizing force when put up against the obviously more fantastical supernatural elements of the movies. That remains true in this film because their dynamic still brings a genuine element that really holds things together even when some other elements are a little shakier or more rushed. I also still really enjoy the ways in which they use and portray Lorraine's gifts in the film. Obviously, these things are heightened and emphasized for film, but I think the way they employ them is very cool and fun to watch, and it makes for some very interesting sequences in the movie. Honestly, some of the most compelling sequences in the entire movie, in my opinion. Also, this is just a mini tangent of mine, but where are the Glatzel parents? They're in the exorcism at the very beginning, and then they just straight up disappear. Even when the little boy David shows up briefly throughout the rest of the movie, he's there with his sister and there are no sign of his parents. Personally, if I'd been demonically possessed as a child and been through an exorcism, my parents would have put me in a protective bubble, and to this day, they still wouldn't let me out of their sight. So that's just a bit of an odd occurrence for me. Maybe the Warrens can look into their disappearance next since they're, crime fighters now. Overall, I think I would probably give this movie a 3 out of 5. The movie does struggle a little bit to find a focal point, especially since it's not centered around one house or location like previous installments of the series have been. The scares in the movie are also fewer and far between, and they tend to veer into more standard horror fare than in previous Conjuring movies. But that being said, I think the active investigation approach was an interesting one, even if it feels a little bloated or disjointed at times, and it really reinforced my belief that I can never, ever fully trust John Noble in a horror movie. No. At the core of it, Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga are still very believable and engaging to watch, and I also thought the rest of the cast gave very solid performances around them as well. There are some cool sequences and interesting atmosphere to be found. I'm just not sure that it is quite as cohesive and frenetic and scary as the other two main Conjuring movies managed to be. If this isn't the horror movie for you, that's fine. Media and art are subjective to begin with, and I sometimes think that horror movies are even more subjective because there are so many different facets to them. Maybe you're somebody who enjoys a tense supernatural thriller, or somebody who enjoys a blood-soaked gore fest or a slasher film, or maybe you're somebody who enjoys all of the different flavors of horror. Flavors? That was a terrible choice of word. But the point is, if this isn't the horror movie for you, that's completely understandable and okay too. It's a big departure from the first two Conjuring movies and what I enjoyed about them, but in the end, I actually enjoyed this approach too. I think that my preference is still for the more overtly horror-focused tone of the first two, but I didn't dislike this movie by any means. So if you're uncertain about this one or on the fence about it, I say give it a try. And at the end of the day, maybe all I really want is to watch Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga be in love and wear vintage clothes on screen. I'm easy like that. That's going to do it for us today. Those are just a few of my thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts below. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and drop a comment down below with your own thoughts on the film if you've had a chance to see it. I think people are pretty split on this one, so I would love to hear some thoughts other than my own. If you enjoy my content, why not hit the subscribe button down below, and be sure to hit that notification bell so you get updates every time I upload something. But other than that, I am Randa. This has been the Southern Fried Nerd, and until next time, have a great day. See ya.